For this week's Smith Business Close-Up, we're on location here at the University of Maryland. And joining us at the Robert H. Smith School of Business is Professor Hank Boyd, who is the Smith School's Diversity Officer and a clinical professor of marketing. Thank you for being with us.
It's great to be back.
Our topic is diversity in business. You have an event coming up aimed at improving corporate diversity. What's the objective?
Well, the objective for this event, we're very excited, is our second Diversity Fireside Chat. So we began this concept of saying, let's bring in people from the private sector, from government, who can speak to issues in diversity. So last year we had Veronica Villalobos, and she came out and spoke for what the government's trying to do in terms of diversity, Office of Personnel Management. And this year, hold on to your hats, John Rogers from Ariel Capital, and he is a legend in terms of investing, African American, starting his own firm, and we're just gratified to have him here at the Smith School.
That's a big name, and somebody, I'm guessing, who would have the opportunity to sit on almost any corporate board that he would want.
That is correct. He's on the board of McDonald's, to give you a sense of things. So we're talking Fortune 500, and his insights, in particular, when we start talking about diversity, if you are an officer and you happen to be a person of color, what are your responsibilities and duties for the corporation?
So where do we stand? What's the state of diversity in corporate America?
Well, we've made some inroads, but we're not quite there yet. So to give you a sense of things, if you think of the Fortune 500, if we look at African American males, it's around 5.5%. And if you look at African American females, it's about 1.9%. But those numbers
are we talking across the employee base or senior executives?
We're talking inside the boardroom at the highest levels of the organization. So we're talking Fortune 500 in that regard. So when you look at that, we've made some progress, but those numbers should be better. And in large part because if you think of products and services, yes, there are many African Americans that buy these products and services, so we need more representation of ourselves on the boards.
So how does that work? What are the corporations missing by not having more diversity in the boardroom, and why don't they know that?
It would seem obvious, but it is amazing. Like, I think of my mother in this regard. I remember many years ago, to her credit, she would get these magazines, and she'd look through and say, all right, are there any African American models? If she didn't see any, she would pick up the phone, call up the magazine and say, now wait a minute, why don't you have any persons of color? What are you telling me? You're telling me I shouldn't buy your product? And so right away I'd think that her remarks would bubble up and would reach somebody who had some weight and could say, look, we need to change this. We need to see that we have diversity within our ranks and we can speak to our consumer base.
The other thing when it comes to corporate boards is there's still a little bit of, it's not a total meritocracy. There's a little bit of who you know, who you went to school with, and there's a lag time in terms of the business school admits a diverse class, but it's going to be a generation before those people are senior executives.
You've hit the nail on the head. Invariably what happens if you're trying to get a board seat filled, it's the network. And are you part of the inner circle or part of the inner sanctum? And it doesn't happen for African Americans, it doesn't happen for Latinos in that regard. And once you think about the nature of these seats that you're there for years, 5, 6, 7, 10 years, serving in a board seat, there are very few that become available in any given calendar year. And then of course, once again, it's not necessarily like here's an ad in the paper, you want to be on the board of, let us say, ExxonMobil.
So what's the mechanism that's going to get companies to do better? Mom's not going to call up some big company and say, I was just looking at your annual report and the board doesn't look all that diverse. So it has to come from within?
I think it has to come from the shareholders. I think it comes from the public at large. When they start sending in emails and they start calling up folks saying, look, why doesn't your board look like the rest of America? And then of course we were going to wake up and say, yes, we have to take action.
And from the standpoint of being diversity officer at the Smith School,
right,
you're talk about what you're doing here in terms of laying the groundwork for that next generation.
For that next generation, I wanted to bring back leaders like John Rogers and various folks in the community to say, if you work hard, if you play by the rules, someday this could be you. You could be the next person. So at least implant that in the minds of students where they're saying, yes, I could someday be on a board, I could be CEO of a company. And to actually see here what it would look like.
Good place to leave it. Hank Boyd joining us here at the Smith School of Business. Thank you for your time.
Always a pleasure.